Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through his top 10 two-player only games. And I stress the only because in all honesty, pretty much every game I run through, with very, very few exceptions, is a good or great two-player game because that's pretty much what I focus on. I only play games as two-player experiences with my wife Jen. So, I mean, heck, all of these games up here are wonderful two-player games, but people are really, really interested in the concept of a game that's designed to be played only with two. And while no two-player only game makes like my personal top 10 of all time, there's still a whole bunch of them that Jen and I really, really enjoy. We tend to stay away from ones that are very, very in-your-face, direct, dueling, conflict-y type stuff, like, say, Magic the Gathering. Although I guess there's one in here that's kind of like that. For the most part, we're always looking for a two-player only game that is, well, I mean, actually, interestingly, yep, every single one of these is competitive except for one. There's only one co-op game on here. But for the most part, these aren't so much about us, trying to rip each other apart or, deal 20 points of damage to each other. But mostly these are about us trying to build something of our own. And, the conflict or the competition comes from we're racing to be the best to build something, or, well, we maybe just, kind of bump into each other along the way because we both want the same stuff to build. So these are all tend to focus on kind of more positive building aspects rather than tearing down, destroying aspects. And again, each and every one of them can only be played with two players. And so, without further ado, let's start counting down with the number 10 on the list. And then we held hands. And like I said, this is the only cooperative game on this list, which actually, I have to admit, kind of surprises me. I guess there's just not that much call for two-player only cooperative games. I mean, I've got a few more of them on the board, like, the Onerim games are really, really cool. But we're talking about the top 10. This is the only one that cracked it. And this is a lovely little game. First of all, I mean, it's visually lovely. It's absolutely beautiful. It's from the same artist who did all the early Dixit cards. And this is a game where two players are in a relationship, a romantic relationship, I guess you'd say, or certainly a deep and meaningful relationship, but the relationship is on the outs. They're on the rocks, they're about to split up, and you players have to work together to try to find emotional balance, both within themselves and within their shared relationship. And we do that, interestingly, by working our way around this kind of round board, playing cards to match these certain emotional requirements either I or my partner has at any given time. And the interesting thing is, if I have a particular emotional requirement that I need to achieve some short-term goal, I can use my own cards or I can use your cards. But it might be that you need that card for yourself, or you might need some card I've got. And so that's where a lot of the crux of the trickiness of the game comes in, using my cards, using your cards, trying to leave cards available for you so that you can achieve what you need to achieve and stuff like that. But the tricky thing is, while we're doing all that, while we're trying to coordinate our actions and achieve this balance, we cannot speak to each other. Because again, we are in a relationship that's very, very rocky, and so we can't just thematically come right out and say, well, I'm feeling kind of ambivalent about this particular thing, and I think you need to, the communication in this game is all about players trying to look at the board from the point of view of their partner and understand what it is they need so that you don't inadvertently, accidentally stomp all over it. That is a thematically beautiful message that's actually tied in and supported by the gameplay mechanisms of this game. Now, really, strictly speaking, this is a very puzzly little abstract game with this neat theme and some lovely art. But it's a great co-op experience, and actually, when I did my original run-through of this, I had an early prototype before it was ever printed, and we thought the game was really, really neat. But with the new final version, they've added some new extra difficulty level stuff you can do, where at certain points in the game you have to resolve arguments that are going on right now, which make the game even tougher than it was before. And so Jen and I have found this is a really wonderful evergreen game. Very, very tiny as well. Super compact, easy to take with you. A wonderful two-player where players are working together, and it's all about communication. And that's my number 10, and then we held hands. Now, moving on to number 9, the first game from one of my favorite designers of all time, Dr. Steve Finn, The Institute for magical arts. Now, this game could have been rethemed to be set in the Harry Potter universe, and to this day I'm still kind of bummed that it wasn't, because it's just would be perfect. This is an Institute of Magical Arts, think Hogwarts, and the headmaster, think Dumbledore, has stepped down, think disappeared or died, and now the teachers, each player is one of the teachers, are now vying to become the headmaster. And you do that by currying the favor and exerting influence on all the other members of the staff so that only one of you can make it to the top. But along the way, you're making potions, you're casting spells, you're going into otherworldly dimensions, and the whole thing is driven by this very, very cool dice system where every round you roll 4 dice, and your opponent can see what you have rolled, but then in secret you've got action cards, and you can assign different action cards to the different dice. So when I roll a couple of 6s and I assign a couple of cards to it, my opponent knows, oh wow, it's a 6. What does that mean? Are they trying to draw more Power Stones? Are they deploying Power Stones? What might it be? As we're playing in this basically kind of area control game, as we deploy these Power Stones along this row of cards that represent all the different people and places and things that exist in the Institute of Magical Arts. It's a very, very fun game. The dice rolling is fun, but really I think what makes it more interesting than anything else is, well, it's actually kind of like the opposite. And then we held hands. It's all about getting into the head of your partner to understand what it is they need so that you can act accordingly. Same thing is true here, because after I roll my dice and you roll your dice and I see what you've rolled, and I'm trying to figure out, right, what should I do with my dice? What are you going to do with your dice? Should I try to compete for certain things, or should I go in a different direction? If I can anticipate what you're doing, because we're planning simultaneously and we reveal at the same time what our plan was. So that means you have to be successful, you have to be very simpatico at what it is you think your opponent's going to do, and zig when they think you're going to zag. It's really clever. It's beautiful. It's fast playing. Sharp, sharp game. Number 9, Institute of Magical Arts. And now, my number 8, I believe, is the only game on this list that I have not actually done a run through for. So you can go see, for all the other ones, you can, if they're interesting, you can go learn more, watch my run throughs. But number 8, I've never done one. And I'm sorry for that, but let's just talk about it. Fjords. Now, one of the reasons I've never done a run-through for it is because this game is incredibly difficult to get your hands on. It has been out of print forever. Gosh, when did this thing get released? Does it say here on the back of the box? In 2005. This game has been out of print since 2005, and it's a shame because the Rio Grande, what are you doing? Somebody talk to them, get them to put another copy of this out, because it's a lovely, delightful game. It makes an excellent travel game. This is a tile laying game where every round we are placing tiles, and kind of Carcassonne style, although they're hex tiles instead of 4-sided tiles, and we're slowly building up this landscape, which I should say looks gorgeous. The art is really simplistic and minimalist, but when you're done, the little board you have created, the little common area, Carcassonne style, that everybody's created is just so lovely and wonderful and lush and verdant. It's very pleasing to the eye. But as we are expanding our environment, we are trying to lay claim to territory, and there's actually 2 waves of territory laying. The first pass and then the second pass, once the world has been built. As we're building the world, we're making early grabs on land that we think is going to pay off later. Once we've run out of tiles and we can't expand the world anymore, the game's only half done. Now we continue to try to grab the remaining land that hasn't already been grabbed based on the choices we made early. And are those choices we made early, did they pan out? Did they give us access to big, vast tracts of land? Or did they just end up stuck in some little corner because of the way the world evolved? It's an incredibly clever game, a wonderful 2-player, face-off area control thing that Jen and I enjoy quite a bit. It's just so lovely. And in fact, interesting thing, it's hard enough to get 1 copy of this, but if you can find 2 copies, as I have done, you'll see I've got 1 set of tiles and a whole nother set of tiles. You can play Mega Fjords, where the game goes on twice as long, and the world becomes very big, and you get some restrictions are removed. It's a very, very cool alternate way to play. But don't worry, even if you can ever find 1 copy of this game and you're looking for a really great 2-player area control game, you might want to snag it up, because it is rarer than hen's teeth. My number 8, Fjords. Now, on to number 7, and Dr. Finn, Steve Finn Games, appears again with Capo Dei Capi, which is a very, very cool competitive game set in Prohibition era gangster times, where each player is the head of a mafioso family, vying for control over the districts of the city, vying for control over corrupt cops, vying for control over the mayor of the city himself. It's really, really interesting. I mean, this is the type of game that I would think normally the subject matter would completely turn Jen off. She would absolutely no interest in it because, you know, it's about being a criminal and running a big criminal enterprise. Heck, even sometimes hiring hitmen to knock stuff off. But the gameplay is so smooth and so fast. Again, like Steve Finn's other game, Institute of Magical Arts, this is a game where we set off on either side of a row of cards that represent, again, area control style, areas that we are trying to exert our influence to score the most points for. And again, we do it via dice. But this game has this brilliantly beautiful push your luck mechanism with the dice. Maybe the best push your luck mechanism I've ever seen. That's a big, big statement, but it's really, really good. And it's a fun, fast game, and it's a testament to how good the gameplay is that Jen will play it in spite of its theme because it is such a good time. My number 7, Capo De Copy. Then moving on to number 6, and this is interesting. I think a lot of people might be kind of surprised by this because I know this game hasn't really gotten quite as much love as Jen and I show it. It's just kind of done okay, but we think it's wonderful. Obviously, it's our number 6, Trambahn. This is a game of building rail lines in, I think it's Zurich or Munich, turn of the century Zurich, Munich, some big city, just as it's starting to, you know, get public transportation in the form of tram trains, railways all over the board. It is a blast. This is a card-driven game, and the crux of it is every card you have is multi-use. You can use them to get money that you'll need for later. You can use them to be the rail lines that you're trying to build on certain district lines because, oh, there's the red line. And and then the third thing the cards can be used for is the actual passengers that will ride on your trains. And so every turn you've got a handful of cards. And the interesting thing is you are required every round to give up at least, or give up one of your cards because that represents the growing demands of passengers who are getting more and more used to riding around on these horseless carriages, these tram lines. And so right off the bat, every round, that's the first thing you have to do. That's a tough decision because you need that card to actually build your lines, or you need that card to make money. So the fact that you're forced to give it up, that is painful. That's a tough way to start every round. But the even trickier thing is, both players are competing for the same line. So if I give up a card that makes the red line more attractive because there's more passengers waiting to be serviced, that might help you because you're stronger in the red line than I am. And sometimes that's a tough choice you have to make. Right, well, I could give up this card that I'm absolutely desperate for, but because if I don't give this one up, any other card I give is going to help you more than it helps me. But so the game is full of very, very tough decisions. And there's another interesting thing as well. You go through, it comes with a big stack of cards, and you go through that deck twice. And when you get to the end of the first one, there is a big sea change. You have to be planning because when you go through the end of the deck once, if you've been building up for like a really, really big purchase, you've been saving a lot of money, but you don't quite get there in time when the deck runs out, you lose all that progress. And that is an incredibly tense and exciting, nail-biting thing. Will you be able to get the cash you need, the funds you need to get the train upgrade before that deck runs out? There's a lot going on in this game. And it's all driven by one of my absolute favorite mechanisms of all time, multi-use cards. So Jen and I don't understand. I mean, if there's one complaint about this game that's, I think, totally valid, it is that this game is very, very luck-centric. Maybe this is the most luck, even though it doesn't have any dice like some of the other games I'm talking about, it's maybe the most luck-driven game because you can get really, really screwed by the cards if they just continue to go against you over and over and over again. And yeah, I guess that's kind of a bother, but you know what? The game is so fast. I mean, it's less than 30 minutes. And in fact, Jen and I found we can blow through this game in under 20, and that's really saying something because we're kind of slow players. It's so quick and it's so compelling and exciting every step of the way. We don't mind because it's just full from beginning to end of really tough, just heartbreaking choices in our number 6, Trambahn. Now, on to number 5, the biggest, heaviest box here. Oh my gosh, this box is so full of expansions, I can barely lift it. Claustrophobia. It's interesting. Every other box I'm looking at today are these little tiny boxes for 2 players, very portable games, great travel games. Not Claustrophobia. This is a beast of a game. And if you want to see more, again, like almost everything I'm talking about today, you can go check out my run-through. But wow. This is a phenomenal 2-player player versus player dungeon crawl where one player, oh, it's too heavy, I can't keep holding it up. One player is the dungeon master. I forget what the term is, but the equivalent of a dungeon master. Deploying bad guys all over the dungeon, trying to stop the advance of the hero, and the other player controls a group of heroes. Coming into this dungeon that is either randomly generated or sometimes it's pre-designed, because the game comes with a whole bunch of different missions, and there's more you can download online, and there's expansions as well. But it's player versus player. I'm the dungeon master. I'm doing my best to destroy your heroes. Your heroes are doing the best to complete whatever quest it is. And, that's normally the kind of thing that would not be a good fit for me and Jen. We don't like facing off across the table from each other with the sole purpose of actually destroying each other. But the gameplay in Claustrophobia is so good, so smart, so clever, so asymmetrical. The two sides couldn't be more different. As a dungeon master, you're effectively playing a dice worker placement game akin to Kingsburg or Dark Horse or Alien Frontier, something like that, where every turn you roll dice and you have to spend those dice as workers to either go for quick, immediate actions right now or to build up turn after turn after turn for some really big apocalyptic thing that'll put the fear into the heroes. Meanwhile, the heroes, every round, they also roll dice, but what they do, they roll a group of dice and they have to assign one die to each of their characters, and that defines what that character is going to be good at and bad at, how strong their strength, their defense, what abilities they'll have access to every round. So every round in this game is, again, a very, very interesting and clever puzzle for both sides to solve. And the thing is, I guess Jen and I, we get so wrapped up in trying to figure out what's the best way I can solve this puzzle that the dice have given me this round. And don't get me wrong, the game also supports more traditional stuff of, oh, now that you and I are fighting, okay, I'll roll some attack dice and see if I do damage to you and all that. That kind of stuff we don't really care for. We like Claustrophobia in spite of that. We'd be happy if none of that stuff was there. We just so love the asymmetry of me, this big, powerful dungeon master, using my dice to set up all kinds of traps and all that, and you, the brave heroes, using your dice to, plan out your strategy. It's so good. It's so clever. We love it in spite of the fact that this is, as far as we're concerned, the best dungeon crawl there is. Period. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And the interesting thing is, it's two-player only. It's absolutely great. There's no reason we should like this game, and yet we love it. It is our number 5, Claustrophobia. Now, moving on to number 4. This is a bit of a classic. Carcassonne, the Castle. Very, very important. The Castle. Not Carcassonne. Not Carcassonne Hunters and Gatherers. Not Carcassonne the City. There's so many different flavors of not Star Wars Carcassonne. Carcassonne the Castle, which unfortunately, again, is another game that's been out of print for quite a while. Rio Grande, why do you hate your fans so much? This should come out. The interesting thing about this is, Jen and I should say, we're not the biggest fans of Carcassonne. We think it's okay. But we've never really been that in love with it. In fact, heck, if Carcassonne had been our gateway game, I don't know if we would have become gamers. It's a good game, but we've just never really captured our imagination that much. But Carcassonne the Castle, which is only for 2 players, you can't play it with more, otherwise it wouldn't be on this list, is an interesting twist because it takes the design of Carcassonne from Klaus-Jürgen Werde, and the designer of the castle is Rainer Knizia. One of the most well-renowned, respected, most influential board game designers of all time. And what Rainer Knizia did to the Carcassonne formula is just phenomenal. The fact that you now have to build within walls, which creates a very, very interesting and challenging puzzle. You can't just build as far as you want in any different direction. You have harsh boundaries you have to adhere to, and that makes the game much more challenging. But I think more than anything else, what I love about this game is the scoring mechanism, because the castle walls you're building within also serve as a point track, which is just really clever. But there are spots on the point track that if you can hit them, if you can score the right number of points so that you will land on these specific spots on the victory point track, you will grab bonuses. And these bonuses are so crucial to winning. It's such a simple thing. You could apply this to any board game that has a victory point track, and yet almost no game has ever done it. It's so clever because, in regular Carcassonne, you just want to score as much as you can, as big, as fast as possible. But this game, you need targeted scoring. Hey, you know what? If I go a little bit longer, I could score maybe 10, 12, 14 points off of this thing. I don't need 10, 12, 14 points. Right now, I need to score 3 points. Because if I score 4 points, I'm going to skip over this bonus that's right here, and I'm going to leave it for you, and that's going to really help you. So how can I go, yeah, I've got the big build-up, that's great, but how can I go for a quick score right now so I can grab this before you do? the area control of your victory point track is what makes this game phenomenal, what we absolutely love about it, and it's why it's our number 4, Carcassonne the Castle. Now, moving on to number 3, I gotta say, these final 3, man, they are tied neck and neck. Any day of the week, if you were to ask me which one I like the best, I could say any of them. They're all practically interchangeable. They are all so good, so magnificent. But still, I did have to rank them. So let's start with number 3, Jaipur, which again I've done a run through for. This is a wonderful, wonderful set collection game where we are merchants in the far eastern market of Jaipur trying to collect silks and gems and and foodstuffs and various and sundry things, and camels, lots and lots of camels. Every round we have a tough choice of what we're going to try and take from the market to build up our own hand of stuff that we can score big points with. But we have to, every round, bear in mind, I mean, can I afford to take that right now, or should I wait? Should I grab this other thing? It's an incredibly tense and exciting game. I'm not going to spend much time on it because, again, I've done a run-through for it. But, this is one of those games I think makes a lot of people's top 10, or not, your number 1 2-player couples game of all time. This thing is absolutely adored. It's just phenomenal. Again, check out my run-through for more. I'm not going to spend much time on it because it's just... Anyway, let's move on from Jaipur, my number 3, to my number 2, Akrotiri from Z-Man Games, Jake Cormer, Sen-Foong Lim. This is a lovely, lovely game. It's interesting as well. This was originally designed to support up to 4 players, but I guess my understanding is that when you play, and you could still do that by buying 2 copies of this and then kind of recoloring some of the player pieces, so you could actually play as a 4-player game. But my understanding is when it was submitted to Z-Man, they said, yeah, we really love this game, but man, when you play full player count, the analysis paralysis, the AP can be so great, it really slows the game down. Have you ever thought about making it just for couples, just a 2-player game, just so it speeds it up, and the designers say, hey, that's cool, let's do it. And so that's why it's on my list, because it's phenomenal. It's my second favorite 2-player game of all time. This is a game of sailing and exploration in the Aegean Sea, and every round, it's another tile line game where you and I, as competitors, are both expanding the same world, the same landscape, looking for goods that we can take back, because this is a pick up and deliver game, which is weird too, because Jen and I hate pick up and deliver, and yet we love this. This is my second favorite 2-player game of all time. And but basically, we're trying to get these goods, bring them back to RC. But the main thing we're actually doing is we have a secret hand of cards that represent the specific locations we are trying to find. So that, I forget if it's either we can build temples or we can uncover lost temples, one or the other. And what we need to do is, as we're laying the tiles, we need to be building this world in such a way that it will fit the map cards we have in our hand that are secret. And so that creates this incredibly rich and interesting puzzle. Again, these are all very cool puzzly games as you try to figure out how best to deploy what you've got in your hand and build this world so that it will fit your needs, so that you can find all these sacred spots. It's an incredibly good game. Absolutely delightful. It's our number 2. And again, you can check out the run-through to see more of Akrotiri. And then, number 1. Targi. This is a worker placement game, and it's incredibly clever. We are different, I guess, nomadic bands of desert wanderers who are, traveling through the desert and grabbing all kinds of resources to be able to convert them into points. Standard kind of stuff. But the crux of this game is it is a worker placement game where you lay out a bunch of cards that represent this desert, and on the outside rim of this board of cards you've made are action cards. And when you place your workers, you don't have to put them wherever you want in the desert to pick up stuff that's like, oh, all those dates that are out there at that oasis, I really need to get there. You don't do that. Instead, you place your workers on the outer edge and do actions on there. And the interesting thing is, once you have, in every round, you're going to place 3 workers. Once you've done that, you say you've placed a worker on the top of this column and on the top of this column and on the side of this row. That will make triangulation, or is it biangulation? I can never remember. If you want to hit this particular spot that's out in the middle of the desert, you need to pick this spot and this spot so that the workers will triangulate to hit the spot out in the desert you want to hit. But do you hit these 2 spots, or do you hit this spot and this spot, because those are the actions you want to do? But can you do that? Because if somebody else grabs the spot you need, now you can't triangulate and get the thing you want out in the desert. It is a very challenging and clever worker placement game. I think, if I recall correctly, this made my top 10 worker placement games of all time as well. It is so good, so fast, so sharp, and it's our #1 two-player game of all time, Targi. And that's it, folks. That is my top 10 two-player only games. And I'm sure there are some people out there who are like, what? Where is X and Y and Z? I mean, there's some very popular two-player games that, heck, Jen and I love a lot. Some of them I have raved about at great length in the past, and they didn't. This was a heartbreaking list. I mean, because these top 10, there were another 10 that if these top 10 didn't exist, I would be so happy to say I love these top 10 two-player only games. There's a lot of great two-player only games out there that don't have to fall into the regular tropes of Magic the Gathering inspired. I've got 20 hit points, you've got 20 hit points, let me try to destroy you before you destroy me. None of these games are about that, with the exception of Claustrophobia. But again, we like Claustrophobia in spite of the fact that we're attacking each other. These are all games where you're trying to do your own thing. You are trying to build your own society, your own sets of resources, and the competition just comes because, well, sometimes it gets, with only one other player, we get in the way. We both want the same thing. Who can get there first? And that's the way we like a good two-player competitive game. I'm surprised. I was really surprised after I did this that there were not more cooperative games in there, but I guess most cooperative games scale really well. And, if they work well for 4, they work well for 2, because there's a lot of... But anyway, I'm going to stop right there. If you have any questions, though, about, hey, what about X, Y, and Z, feel free to ask. I'll cover this topic in my next podcast, which will be coming up pretty soon. And otherwise, I think we're going to close it right there, and I'm going to say thanks very much for watching, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.